1, 2, 850, and then we'll go on to 1309, Delegate Wu. Then we'll go to 957, Delegate Wilson, then to Delegate Jones, 1129, then to Delegate Acebero, 1473, Delegate Steve Johnson, 1499, and we'll end with my bill, House Bill 333. So let's go ahead and get started. I see we've gone live. So good afternoon. This is the Government Operations and Health Facilities Subcommittee of the Health and Government Operations Committee. It is Friday, the 14th of March. This is a work session where we will go over 8 bills. And with these are all Lindsay Rose bills today. Lindsay's the committee counsel for these bills. So let me turn it over to Lindsay and have her tell us about HB 1544.
So this bill establishes the Maryland Law Enforcement Public Service Medal as the highest state honor awarded to law enforcement officers for exceptional public service, valor, and heroism. The Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services must establish a medal review committee to evaluate nominations and select medal recipients. The governor may award a maximum of 4 medals per calendar year to sworn law enforcement officers in the state who meet specified conditions and must present the medals in an official state ceremony held annually in Annapolis. Medal production and ceremony expenses must be funded through an annual appropriation in the state budget and grants, private sponsorships, and law enforcement foundation support. A law enforcement agency must grant a 1-grade promotion to an employee who receives a medal, and DPSCS must convene the first medal review committee by September 1st, 2025, and the first annual ceremony must be held by January 31st, 2026. The sponsor submitted amendments that add an additional law enforcement officer to be recognized in the preamble, and that includes a special section provision that the law enforcement officers listed in the preamble receive the medal at the first ceremony held on or before January 31st, 2026. I'll note that lists now 5 individuals receiving the medal, and the bill does specify that there should be 4 medals annually, so I don't just put that out there. And then it requires a law enforcement agency to grant a 1-grade pay increase rather than a promotion to an employee who receives a medal.
Okay, thank you. We had heard, is Samira Jackson with us yet?
Yes, good afternoon, Delegate. Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. I'm right here.
Thanks. Delegate Bandari, you and I spoke briefly on the floor today that there's an issue about the promotion or even the pay increase having to do with collective bargaining, that it would complicate matters quite a bit. And Delegate Bandari, you had told me that you are okay with removing that provision. Okay.
Sure. Sure.
Samira, if you want to if there's any clarification that you need to make right here so that we're all in agreement.
I could talk offline because of the interest of the time.
Okay.
Sure, yep. And so just to be clear, Delegate, we would be removing that authorization of the pay grade increase?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. That's wonderful. Thank you. I'll let the police chiefs and sheriffs know.
Okay, and Lindsay, are you up to date on everything that we're talking about here?
Yes, so this provision that says law enforcement agency shall grant a 1-grade with amendment pay increase to an employee who receives a medal, we'll just cut the entire subsection from the bill and renumber accordingly.
Mr. Chair, if we could, because there is a discrepancies since we added the name, if we could make it 5 recognized person, because it says it's the 4 people to make the consistency. And like if we could distribute that medals, have a ceremony in the anniversary of our bridge collapse. One of our members suggested, which is the great idea as well, if the committee is okay with that.
Lindsay, did you get that?
Or forgive me, what is the date of the bridge collapse?
It was
from MDOT's got their hand up.
Oh, Nora, do you have the date?
Yeah, hi, good morning. That would be March 26th.
March 26th.
So the first one will be March 26, 2026.
We would need to make this an emergency bill to accommodate that, or we'd put it
No,
in.
no, no, that would be next year.
Okay, all right, thank
They've
you.
got it, that would be the first date.
Okay, with that, that conceptual amendment that Lindsay assures us that she has.
Yeah, so just to
complete-
run through it again, on page
Okay.
3 of the bill, it says the governor may not award more than 4 medals. We'll change that to 5. That's in page 3, line 4. Then on page 4, we'll strike lines 4 and 5. Where the law enforcement agency shall grant a 1-grade pay increase or promotion to an employee who receives a medal. We're striking that and renumbering accordingly. And then on page 5, that the ceremony shall be held on, we're going to say March 26, 2026. So I'll strike the or before language as well. So it's specified that it's going to be held on that day.
Okay, great. And Shamira, with those changes, the police chiefs have withdrawn their opposition?
Yes, we were supporting with amendments,
Okay.
Mr. Chair. So yes, we will support the bill now.
I have a note here that there was opposition. Was there any additional opposition to this?
No, it was
Okay.
just that one line. We really appreciate seeking to honor law enforcement this way.
Okay, great. Does someone want to move that amendment?
Move the amendments.
And a second?
Second.
Any further discussion on the amendment? Okay, and thank you both for working on this. All in favor of the amendment, say aye. Okay, opposition to the amendment? Okay, Delegate Bandara, you had a comment?
No, I'm good. Thank you so much.
Okay, now on the bill as amended.
Move the bill as amended.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the bill as amended. All in favor of the amended bill, say aye.
Aye.
Opposition to the bill? Seeing none, we will move that bill forward unanimously. And thank you both again.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, committee members.
You're welcome. House Bill 850, Delegate Williams.
As introduced, this bill required the Commissioner of Labor and Industry to develop a clear and easy to understand graphic data dashboard that includes specified information about workers and wages for ongoing public work contracts. Contractors must submit specified information to the Commissioner once a week, and the Commissioner must update the data dashboard at least once a month. The fiscal note on this bill said it couldn't be implemented with existing information technology resources, and the reliable estimate of the cost of developing the system was not feasible, but could be in the millions of dollars. The sponsor had submitted amendments to strike the bill and establish the work group on the creation of a data dashboard for public work contracts and apprentices to study the most efficient and cost-effective method to create a publicly available data dashboard that disaggregates information regarding public work contracts with the state and make recommendations. The report is due on or before January 7th, 2027.
Okay, did Delegate Williams join us?
I'm
Okay.
here as a representative, yes.
Okay, anything you'd like to add to that, Michael?
No, just that the amendment, there was a subsequent amendment that replaced an AFL-CIO representative on the work group with somebody from the pipe trades.
And Lindsay, you have that?
So the amendment that I've received has one representative of the Mid-Atlantic Pipe Trades Association in it. This is amendment ID 283329/1. Is that the one that you guys intended to submit?
That should be correct, yes.
Okay, good. Someone want to move the amendment, please?
Move the amendment.
Thank you.
Second.
All right, motion and a second on the amendment. Delegate Johnson, discussion on the amendment?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, that was a miscue.
Okay. No discussion on the amendment. All in favor of adopting the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposition to the amendment? Seeing none, is there a motion on the bill as
Move the
amended?
bill as amended.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the bill as amended. Delegate Chisholm, discussion?
This is a dashboard?
It's a work group to consider establishing a dashboard.
A dashboard. That's a great idea. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any further discussion? We have a motion and a second on the bill as amended. I'll call for a vote. All in favor of the amended bill, raise your hand, say aye. Any opposition to the amended bill? Delegate Shalega. Anyone else? Okay, Delegate Kipke? Delegate Chisholm? Just make a note here. All right, we'll move that bill along to the committee as well. We'll move on to House Bill 1309.
As introduced, this bill requires, beginning in 2026, each local school system to comply with the state minimum cybersecurity standards, biennially conduct a cybersecurity maturity assessment, biennially report compliance to the Office of Security Management beginning June 30th, 2026, and retain sufficient cybersecurity staff as specified. The bill also requires DO-IT to assign at least 3 information security officers to support local school systems compliance with these requirements. Fiscal or compliance audits conducted by the Office of Legislative Audits must be guided by DO-IT's minimum cybersecurity standards. The sponsor has submitted amendments that alter the date by which each county board must submit an annual report on the amount spent on IT staff, removes the requirements that the state CISO determine the appropriate cybersecurity staffing level for each county board, and removes the requirement that each county board certify compliance with the state minimum cybersecurity standards every 2 years, and instead requires local school system to meet with a DO-IT information security officer, develop a plan to it and timeline to meet the standards, and submit the plan to the state CISO if DO-IT determines that the local school system does not meet the state minimum cybersecurity standards. I will note that the fiscal note estimated general fund expenditures of $900,300 in fiscal year 2026 for the staffing and contractual support those 3 DO-IT staff people, which are not struck by the amendments.
Okay. Delegate Wu.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. So the amendment, I think this bill is cross-filed with Senator Katie Hester. So we had a conversation, they had a conversation with the Department of IT. And so there's some disagreement in terms whether they have the capacity to get that 3 staff member there. And Senator Hester's office said last year they allocated money there. So I think it's really depends how the committee want, because that's requirement for that 3 staff members maybe not necessary because they have the capacity already. They just need to have dedicated function coordinated with this effort. That's what our understanding. So I think it's really depend on the committee's intention, and remove that or keep that, or at the same time, I feel strongly about this bill because it's really build a framework for our school system to really guard against this malware and some other cybersecurity threat.
Delegate Wu, we would, before we could move this bill, we would need to get a fiscal note of this magnitude approved by appropriations. And if you would have to provide us with a letter saying that you had amended the bill to the point where the fiscal note was not required, or that the departments saying that they would need these existing resources would say that they could do it with existing resources and wouldn't need the additional. Have you been able to obtain any of that?
We had a conversation. Unfortunately, had some disagreement. We are continue have conversation with them. So maybe we should come back to you.
Okay, I'll give you a little bit more time then. We'll hold the bill for today. Thanks for joining us.
Sure. Thank you very much.
Moving on to House Bill 957, Delegate Wilson.
This bill establishes state residency requirements for apprentices, journey workers, and employees on state contracts. The Maryland Department of Labor is responsible for enforcing the bill's requirements, and any costs incurred to administer the bill must be paid from the State Apprenticeship and Training Fund. Contractors found in violation of the bill's requirements are subject to financial penalties and debarment. The amendments submitted by the sponsor limit the application of the bill to public work contracts subject to the prevailing wage law, alters the definition of new apprentice and defines registered apprenticeship program, removes certain requirements for contractors to ensure that certain percentages of skilled worker hours, common labor worker hours, and apprenticeable hours are performed by state residents, authorizes contributions in lieu of fulfilling the apprentice and worker requirements to be made to the State Apprenticeship and Training Fund, and decreases the penalty for failing to meet the requirements of the bill. I circulated a reprint of this bill.
You could cancel it through your TV, but it's actually.
And I just wanted to note, and I've spoken with the sponsor staff about this, striking that like enumerated list of percent of certain hours was the only, on page 7, that was the only use of the term apprenticeable hour. which is defined on page 5 of the bill. So I suggested that that definition should then be removed since it's not being used anywhere else. And then the also on page 7 of the bill with their amendments, the contributions in lieu of meeting the requirements, that language about as an alternative to meeting the requirements should really be a lead-in, I believe, to the alternatives of contribution to the state apprenticeship and training fund or a registered apprenticeship program, because it's not just a qualifier for the registered apprenticeship program. It would be for either of those two options. So again, I've spoken with the sponsor about making those 2 corrections to the amendments, just to clarify what their original intent was.
And where are we with that request?
I've spoken to them about it. I would have to draft the change, but
Okay, but we have Sharon.
Yes,
sir. How you doing, Chairman Kerr? And we're amenable to those changes. That should not be a problem at all. And she spoke, Lindsay spoke with me today, then confirming our confirmation on that.
Good. I know that there were some concerns from MDOT and from,
In MDOL as well.
yeah. Is anyone here from those organizations who would like to speak about the bill today? Hi, Nora, how are you?
Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, I think, we enumerated some concerns in our letter. I wanted to just give the floor to our Chief Procurement Officer, Valerie Radomski, who can kind of go into the impact to us, but wanted to make sure you all got a chance to hear those and see if we work through maybe some compromise here.
Okay, thank you. Who were you turning the floor over to?
Valerie Radomski.
Valerie. Oh, hi, Valerie. Go
Hi,
ahead.
Delegate. Hi, Delegate Kerr. Thank you. Thank you, Nora. Most of our concerns revolve around competition. We're especially concerned for State Highway Administration for all of their construction contracts on the Eastern Shore and in Western Maryland for Districts 1 and District 6. With Maryland's geography, there's a lot of employers, there's a lot of contractors who bring, workers cross state lines every single day. So we're concerned that we would be limiting competition and then increase the bid prices. We already have limited competition in both of those geographic areas now. So we're concerned, if they would have to hire more workers who live within the state. We're also concerned because this could trigger reciprocity. And I saw that came up during the hearing, that the Maryland companies who are bidding on projects in Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Virginia, Delaware, that they would then have to hire, say, Delaware residents instead of bringing their Maryland residents who already work for the company. So those are our concerns.
Did you just mention it, or did I read it earlier that you were also worried about retaliation, perhaps from?
Well, it's really the reciprocity. I mean, you could call it retaliation. We don't usually use that strong of a word, but we just,
choice of word. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. You're right. I mean, it could be construed that way for sure, that our Maryland companies would also be subject to those requirements if we put those requirements in place. We have, some concerns anytime there's an added compliance burden and an added administrative burden for our vendor community. They can make the decision. We don't have the administrative staff. We don't want to pay additional hours for this compliance. So, I mean, there's always a mild concern over something like that. But I think the amendments that have been proposed for the large projects would alleviate most of our concerns for that. And it would really just be for the apprentices, which we totally appreciate at MDOT. We've been working very hard trying to increase the apprentices working on our project, workforce development, project labor agreements, all of that. So I could see where that would help, but we're still also concerned for the requirement for 51% of the total number of new employees and new apprentices being state residents for the small projects between 300,000 and 5 million.
Oh, for the small projects.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Does Sharon, from Chairman Wilson's office, have you had any discussions about this yet?
No, we've not had. So the
Okay.
thing about the amendments that you see that we shared with the committee, they were actually, favorable amendments from MDOL.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, we've not been able to, speak directly with MDOT, prior to the hearing concerning these concerns. So it's kind of, with all due respect, it was a little bit of a late notice. We weren't able to have, them involved in stakeholder conversations, but
Hey, Sharon, I'm happy to catch up with you after this. If
please and thank you.
I'll shoot you an email.
Yeah. Okay, let me hear from the committee. Delegate Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I don't know if this even makes sense, but Jerron, if we have particularly sensitive areas like Western Maryland and Eastern Shore, maybe you can talk to the chair of ECM about, has he thought about just cutting out certain districts, that we would just exclude Western Maryland, Eastern Shore, something like that. I don't know if that even makes sense, but we certainly don't want to cause more harm trying to achieve some good.
And that makes sense to me. Thank you for that suggestion, Delegate Hill.
Thank you, Delegate Hill. Delegate Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Are there any current provisions and requirements that a percentage of the general contractors, subcontractors be local subcontractors, which in turn would be local residents working on the job? Does anybody know that answer?
If you don't know the answer.
Does MDOT know that at all? I'm not familiar with that information.
Okay, why don't you make a note of that, how the subcontractors would fit into this? Anything else, Delegate Johnson?
If they could get that information, that might clear some of this up for us. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Delegate Chisholm?
At the time of the hearing, in the last fiscal note I see in here, it still says sufficient information was not available in time to include any analytics of the fiscal impact of this legislation. However, special and/or general fund expenditures likely increase significantly. And I know you were just mentioning the appropriation, so I don't know if we ever got a tighter number on that, or if they can even make a guess at this point.
Okay, yeah, and if you could work on that as well. Thank you, Delegate Chisholm. Delegate Chalega?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To go along with Delegate Hill's concerns about Western Maryland, Eastern Shore, look, Delegate Johnson and I have plenty of folks that live in Pennsylvania, and I just invite you to go to Route 83 before and after work, and it is a lot of Marylanders that have moved to Pennsylvania and they still work here. Considering a lot of Baltimore County Police, city firefighters, and then of course contractors, being a small contractor and the level that you were talking about limiting this to, we had employees that lived in Pennsylvania just because it's cheaper. So I'm not sure we want to move forward with this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Obviously, we have some more work to do on this bill, so we're not going to take any action today, but let me just inquire, is there anyone else who is here today to speak to this bill? Delegate Alston?
I was just going to say, I support the concept of the bill, especially in Prince George's County. When we have construction contracts, we're having the experience of people actually being bussed in or flown in from other states in order to do this work. When we have eligible qualified workers right here in the state of Maryland and our surrounding counties that need the employment and could use the money. So I think that the concept is good. So I hope that we are able to keep working on the bill and not kill it.
Okay, thank you. If no one else has anything to weigh in on.
Just ask a question to the
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Sean.
In terms of the fiscal note, I understand that there is, some gray area in that regard, but the legislative intent is that this will be an investment in the Maryland workforce, so that if these bids were to, to rise, then the money would be hopefully shared with with constituents, so then it would hopefully aid our local economy. I'm just in terms of Delegate, I'm sorry, Chalega,
yeah.
If I pronounce it correct.
Mm-hmm.
Are there concerns with like the law enforcement and the other essential services, are those concerns warranted for like, contracting as well?
Sure. Well, I'm a former general contractor for 40 years in Baltimore County. We just closed our business last year. My husband retired. So I am extremely well versed in contracting and construction. And Baltimore County and Harper County employers have quite a few employees that live in Pennsylvania. I mean, the housing costs, the taxes, it's cheaper. And so I think you're going to, and we of course had apprentice programs. I understand what you're saying with people busing in workers. Perhaps I've never seen that. You know, I live 25 minutes from Pennsylvania. I think Delegate Johnson might live closer than that. So, you know, that artificial border is just that, you know, with regards to employees.
Okay, we'll go
Thank
ahead
you,
and we'll hold this bill. And Sharon, if you could get back to us when you've got some progress made on it, we'll get it back on an agenda.
Thank you, Chairman Kerr.
Okay, thank you. Thank everyone who was here for House Bill 957. Let's move on to House Bill 1129.
This is a proposed constitutional amendment that alters terminology, as introduced, alters terminology in the Maryland Constitution that references the governor, lieutenant governor, secretary of state, attorney general, comptroller, treasurer, and adjutant general to make those references gender neutral, to recognize that women might hold some of those positions or all of those positions perhaps at some point. The sponsor has an amendment that adds in the same intent, but for Article 3, which is the legislative department. So members of the Senate and House of Delegates that are also often women.
Yeah, the presiding officers were added with the amendment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all of Article
All
3
of Article 3.
throughout where
Move.
there's references
Okay.
to.
Move the amendment.
Move the amendment second.
Second.
Okay, the amendments have been moved and seconded. Discussion on the amendments? Delegate Alston?
Yes, so my concern, I appreciate the intent of the bill. My concern is we're amending the Constitution, and I am not sure that have we looked fully at the Constitution to see if there are any other areas that we need to look at, because today we got like a 13-page reprint that had a whole nother section in there. So tomorrow we're going to get another reprint that has another section of the Constitution that we missed. I think it might be more prudent to slow it down a little bit and make sure we've explored all of the areas. That's concern number one. And then concern number two is sometimes when we're making these changes, we're changing it with words that are not grammatically correct. And I cannot support that. So there's a reference to themselves in the Constitution, and I don't think that's the intent. So we would need to make it more wordy. His self, herself, they self, whatever. I think that would need to be corrected. But I think we need to take a more holistic look at the Constitution to see where else these references may be, so that we can do it all in one swoop instead of piecemealing it.
I know we spoke about the gender neutral pronouns yesterday, Delegate Alston. And so, you know, I was a community college English professor for 25 years, and I fought that battle with my students over when a student registers for class they, and I said, no, you're talking about one student and you're using a plural pronoun. And I fought that fight for a really long time. But language, I came to understand, evolves over time. And I looked yesterday, and the AP guidelines, the APA guidelines, and the Chicago manual have all changed their guidelines to say, when it can be avoided, try and avoid it. When it can't be avoided, the plural non-gender specific pronoun is acceptable, even with use with a singular subject. So it was
Well, they are wrong.
I was there with you. I fought it for 25 years. I finally had to just understand that I have to evolve with the language. We have the bill sponsor here, Delegate Jones.
Thank you, Chair. And I want to thank the committee and thank all of the members who I spoke to personally on this. As a reminder, our Constitution only recognizes men for constitutional office holders. And that's what the constitutional amendment gets at. It gets at the fact that everyone is called he. And I was so happy to have the support of the governor, of the comptroller. Again, the majority of our state constitutional office holders are in fact women in the executive branch. So this does not make gender neutral language. It just calls the office holders by their name, which is the governor, the lieutenant governor, the, adjutant general. So this does not put in gender neutral language. This just talks about the office holder by name. And I appreciate all the conversations that I've had and all of the committee's willingness to work with me on this. Thank you.
I was also, you mentioned the adjutant general. I was also surprised to find out that that this bill was originated at her request.
Yes, it was. The general did bring this to me. So I'm very appreciative to her as well.
Delegate Hill?
Thank you. So I don't have the same concerns. I actually like the bill and I'll be voting for it. But I did want to ask a question of Lindsay to get to Delegate Austin's point. Lindsay, isn't there a process every few years where Legislative Services does a review to look for inconsistencies or wrong language or something that would pick up if there were some things that we missed in this bill? Or am I wrong about that?
I think you're thinking of the annual corrective bill and the curative bills, but those are really just statute. I don't think that those generally look at the Constitution.
Okay, thank you.
Because that would require a constitutional amendment.
Thank you.
Delegate Kaiser?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I heard Delegate Jones's response to Delegate Alston. I just want to go back to it. I understand that Delegate Jones is just trying to deal with the constitutional officers here. But if we were to then take that next look, maybe it's next year, to do the rest of the Constitution to fix all the pronouns, would we end up having like a second constitutional amendment on pronouns, which will just make our people think we're kind of nuts here?
No, because next session, it would be too late, obviously, to get on the ballot. Delegate Kaiser, I believe by the time we...
That's not answering my question. If we
Okay,
did
what's your question? Pose your question once more.
If we did constitutional officers and under one constitutional amendment, and then 2 years later did the rest of the pronouns in the Constitution, that feels pretty wasteful to do it in two parts. So.
I'm combing through it, but this was the only part that we found them. And because this was dealing with the constitutional officers and the role that they have for our state, it was the place where they popped up.
So
if you didn't find them anywhere else, that's the answer. Okay, thank you.
Delegate Hill?
Yeah, so the bill that I had that we introduced and is now being held, and if it ever comes up, I'm not going to offer the amendments to it. I think it's fine without them. But that bill was also gender neutral corrective. And if, so there are other places in the Constitution, because that was one of the things that bill did. So, I mean, there are a couple possibilities if we wanted to move forward and that we're concerned. I think we can move. I don't have a problem moving forward piecemeal. One possibility is that we do an amendment to change all and just say that it changes all of the gender to neutral and it specifies and amend that onto this bill. And the other would be to amend that portion of my bill on take out the God stuff if that hasn't been voted on, but do the, but I think that we can do this bill and still address the concerns about where else in the Constitution does it have to be changed. So I guess my amendment would be that we add a line that says in everywhere else in the Constitution where there's gender specific terms that they shall be changed to, and we list them.
And we let somebody else wordsmith all the gender challenges of cleaning up themselves kind of language.
I would have to maybe get some advice on this, but I don't think you can, the same way, you do have bills where you say that the publisher shall fix cross-references or references. I don't know that you can do that with a constitutional amendment, but I would need to get some advice on that. And just to clarify, Delegate Hill's bill dealt with the Declaration of Rights.
Delegate Alston?
Can we hold this bill so Lindsay can get those questions answered?
Yes, we can do that. I think, Lindsay, do you know when we're going to meet again? Probably,
To be determined.
okay, could be tomorrow. So, well, whenever you have a chance to get answers to a couple of these questions.
Or could we move it as is and answer the questions in the next 3 hours the next 6 hours before we vote as a full committee?
We're voting as a full committee in 1 hour and 10 minutes.
But we're probably going to finish the rest after the floor later tonight. So, anyway. All right.
Vote on the bill.
Let's go ahead. We have a motion and a second on the amendments. Let's take a vote on the amendments. All in favor of the adopting the amendment, say aye. Opposition to adopting the amendments? Okay, Alston. Okay, and does someone want to move the bill?
I'm requesting my hold.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right, we will hold the amended bill. Okay, moving on to House Bill 1473.
As introduced, this bill expands existing requirements for specified state departments, agencies, and programs regarding efforts to provide equal access to public services for individuals with limited English proficiency. Among other requirements, the entities must develop a language access plan, take reasonable steps to provide equal access to public services for individuals who need language assistance based either on their limited English proficiency or a disability, and arrange for the translation of vital documents as specified. By September 30th of each year, each state entity identified by the bill must submit a report to the Governor's Office of Immigrant Affairs that contains certain information for the previous fiscal year. The office must generally monitor and enforce compliance with the bill's provisions. And then, as originally introduced, the bill required beginning in fiscal 2027, the governor to include an annual budget in the annual budget, an appropriation of $400,000 to the office to implement its responsibilities under the bill. The sponsors submitted 2 amendments to the bill that strike that $400,000 in mandated appropriation and restores the existing percentage under current law of 3% for the limited English proficient population for which the vital documents must be translated. The bill was reducing that to 0.5%. These are both to address the fiscal note on the bill, which was went up to $706,500 in fiscal year 2030.
And do these fully address the fiscal note?
I mean, I'm not the fiscal note writer. I believe so because the fiscal note was noting the $400,000 manual mandated appropriation to the office, and then in cost increases for the agencies due to that change from the 3% of the affected population to 0.5%. So that would thereby increase the number of languages that are covered. But I believe, I don't know if anyone from the sponsor's office is here or the affected agencies that expressed concern about the costs, but they might be able to speak more specifically to their costs.
Yeah, anyone here to speak on this bill? And there are these 2 amendments, you said. To address, okay, let's, do I have a motion on the amendments?
Move the amendments.
And a second?
Second.
Motion and a second on the amendments. Does anyone care to discuss the amendments? All right, seeing no discussion, I'll call for a vote. All in favor of adopting the amendments, say aye.
Aye.
Opposition to the amendments? Do I hear a motion to move the amended bill?
Move the bill as amended.
And a second? I have a question. Okay, we have a motion and a second on the amended bill. Discussion on the amended bill?
Lindsay, can you tell me for someone on the Friday of crossover week with brain fog, how is it that this work can be done and there not be a fiscal note?
Oh, Stephanie,
One from the agency might be able to speak to it.
Thank you.
Stephanie Dollamore.
Yeah, apologies. I'm on my phone. It took me a second to find the mute button.
Okay.
Stephanie Dollamore with the Maryland Developmental Disabilities Council. We believe that for many agencies, especially with returning it, our understanding is returning it back to the 3%. Many agencies are already doing this work. A lot of the edits in the bill are around clarifying language that aligns with federal policy. And so you'll see agencies reported in the fiscal note that they can incorporate this into their existing resources. It also aligns with work that's happening under the Maryland Plain Language Initiative. So there's a lot of efforts around making language access happen, which is why some of the calculations were hard to create. So that's what I have to contribute. Let me know if you have more questions.
That's helpful. I would like to ask you, what is the Maryland Plain Language, whatever the next word is?
Yeah,
What is that?
I apologize. That last year, Governor Moore signed an executive order to create the Maryland Plain Language Initiative, whereby all state agencies and their websites and all written materials will have to be moved to be in plain language. And so the Maryland Department of Information Technology is working on implementing that and putting significant resources to that. And by putting things in plain language, it reduces the cost of translating materials into additional languages. The DD Council's worked with like the Maryland Vehicle Administration on projects related to that. So we have a lot of experience. I wrote about it in my written testimony, so I'd be happy to follow up with more information if needed.
I'm not trying to be difficult. What is plain
You're
language?
fine. Not difficult at all. Plain language generally follows the guidance under the Federal Plain Language Act, and it means that something can be understood the first time it's written. So it's generally another way. Sometimes it's described as written at the second grade level.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Stephanie. Delegate Chisholm.
I guess my question is, do we need the bill? It sounds like we're already putting this into place and the governor's orders are already putting all of this stuff into action. I don't understand why we need the bill.
May I offer additional comment on that?
Please do, Stephanie.
So that is the additional element in the bill is requiring a language access plan, which is not currently required, as well as a monitoring component, which has never been part of Maryland statute. Almost all other states that have language access requirements have some sort of mechanism to monitor and provide resources to state agencies as they're doing it. And this is happening informally, but the advocates in the community that have worked on this for 3 years feel like there could be more robust effort. So that's why we feel like there's a need for this bill this year.
And that would have no fiscal impact?
That's our understanding. I mean, that is our read on this. That's my best interpretation. Yeah. There's a lot of efforts that are happening around this. It's just about getting everybody on the same page and having everybody talk to each other, right? And I think sometimes having guidance that's outlined that says that helps make that happen.
Okay. Mr. Chair, I don't know if you need a bill to provide guidance, but that's just my personal opinion, but I appreciate it.
Thank you, Delegate Chisholm. Ashley, are you have a response to Delegate Chisholm's?
Yes, I do. Yes, Ashley Willard from the Public Justice Center. So we do definitely need this bill. I will say several states that have their own language access law. So there's a federal language access law that governs both federal financial assistance recipients generally, like state agencies, and then one that governs healthcare. Some states, like Maryland, have adopted their own language access laws, but several other states have a monitoring and enforcement mechanism. Without that, there's really no recourse for people with limited English proficiency who are denied access to interpretation or translation. The only recourse they really have is to file a complaint with the federal government, which we're not sure if that process will still exist. Based on, a couple weeks ago, the administration had passed an executive order that actually no longer requires federal agencies to provide interpretation and translation to people with limited English proficiency. So the goal of this bill, it's not just guidance, it would also preserve protections on the state level that exist on the federal level. And as Stephanie was saying, language access plans, it's a best practice that's recommended. And while not required on the federal level, because it's a best practice for agencies to prepare, anytime that they receive a phone call or a walk-in from somebody who does not speak English, they need to have a plan in order to serve that population. So those are the goals that the bill is trying to get at, is to both strengthen Maryland's existing law, but also preserve protections that we have that may go away on the federal level.
Thank you, Ashley. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Delegate Taveras.
Actually, Ashley said the things that I was about to say, because I created one of the first or second language access jurisdictions in Prince George's County, and we had to build it there. And I'm not saying it's perfect, because even there, we don't have enforcement. And for case in point, we need, even though we have language access, like yesterday, I was dealing with a case where a young lady was about to be, our colleague was about to do the hearing, she was about to be raped, called 911 7 times, and the people were not willing to engage. And so there's a breakdown in communication, and now more than ever, we need people who are actually going to take time to have that communication, and they have to be able to do it in their language. Thank you.
Thank you. We're right up against the clock. Lindsay has to be in another committee meeting with health occupations. So let's see if we can wrap this one up. Delia Chalega.
Thank you. I'm not sure was this bill amended, or was it just this short amendment? So if it's minor amendments to the bill, on page 6, it says that we're going to provide oral language assistance, including interpretation in non-English language, provided in person or remotely by a qualified interpreter, and then arrange for a qualified bilingual staff. I don't know how we don't have a fiscal note. And then going down to the bottom of that page, determine the number or percentage of individuals with limited English proficiency or eligible to be served. Estimate the frequency with individuals with limited English proficiency will come into contact with the State Department, agency, or program. And, then on the next page, the types and descriptions, a language assistant that the State Department, agency, or program will provide. I don't know how you don't have a fiscal note with this when you need human beings to do this work.
Okay, unfortunately, we're out of time.
Sponsor is in the waiting room.
We're out of time. We'll have to get him back when we revisit this bill at our next meeting.
What bills did we not get to today, Mr. Chair?
1499 and 333, and then
Okay.
finishing up this one.
And okay, thank you, sir.
Okay. All right. Sorry, everyone who's here for the last two bills, but we will get together very soon and take those bills on. So with that, those of you who have health occupations need to get to your other subcommittee, and I will call this meeting adjourned.